Here we go. What's up, everybody? How are you? God bless you. Hope you are all doing well. Hope everybody can hear me okay. We got some people joining. Keith, I see you. Caleb, I see you. I see you. All right, y'all ready? We're going to do this interview with the one and only world famous Stacy Lynn Harp. Like, I think she probably has tea and crumpets with Trump every now and then. That's how famous she is. Seriously, like she's like super amazing. You hear me okay? Awesome, awesome. Great, great, great. So, you know what? Let's get her on. Let's get her on, guys. All right. Boom. There we are. We're on. Hello, everybody. What's up, Stacy?
Hi, Rick. Oh, I'm so, I just left the Trump's house, and
Yeah. Did you and Ivana go shopping or anything?
yeah, can't you tell?
Oh, yeah.
Had my
Definitely.
hair done. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
I
All right.
wish.
Cool, cool, cool. So I see you guys coming in. Hey, everybody. What's up? Brittany,
Is it?
Melanie.
Yeah, is it okay if I look over here too, just so you know, so I can look too, so I can see.
Yeah, so forgive us if we're not looking directly at you guys at all times, but we're trying to look at you guys too, because Periscope is all about being interactive. It's not just me, you know. We talk to you too. You too. Okay, yeah, that was funny. All right.
All right.
So we got about 15 people. Beth Hoover, what's up, Beth? How are you? God bless you.
Yeah, look at all you guys.
Everybody's pouring in.
Thanks for coming in. I hope this is worth your time.
See, and we were wondering, was anybody going to show up? Oh, ye of little faith.
I know, right? I mean, my faith is this big. Just kidding.
As long as it's a mustard seed size, right? That's all that matters. Hey, Brittany, I see you. Hey, Beth Hoover, Jason. More people will show up. Oh, they will. They will. From Oregon. Hey, what's up? Grace and peace to you, too. Amen. Hey, Lisa, what's up? All right, cool, cool. Everybody's coming on in. Family's all coming in. Hey, Al, how you doing, brother? God bless you. God bless you. All right, so let's do this, guys. I think this is going to be my first interview ever. And y'all know me. Y'all know me. I can be funny. I can be humorous. You can't take anything I say seriously because I'm just that type of person. So, but anyway, we're gonna try to be a little bit serious. A little bit try. Oh, Brielle said, "Hey, what's up, Brielle?" We're gonna try to be a little bit serious. A little bit serious. So, how many of you guys know Stacy Lynn? You've watched Stacy Lynn. Type a 1 in the Periscope right now. I want to see who knows Stacy Lynn Harp. And if you don't type a 1, I'm gonna be like, "What's wrong with you?" Like everybody knows Stacy. Are you kidding me? Me and Stacy found. Hey, Coach Mo. We found a Twitter from years. I don't even know how many years ago. We were like, "Wait a minute. We even talked back then."
Yeah, it was like I think it was like 2009 or 10 or
Yeah,
something.
long time ago. Yep, Stacy's going to be interviewing me about, maybe it might be about this, maybe on Tuesday, maybe.
Yep.
But yeah, see some ones. Set
Hi,
free.
Beth, and everybody, Set Free, and Coach Mo, and
Pastor
everybody.
Paul, what's up?
And Jason, and Winnie, and Mia. And all right, good. We got you some super hearts. That's awesome.
Yay. Cool. Yeah, guys, thanks so much in advance for the hearts, the super hearts. Share it out and invite all your followers, guys. Hopefully this is going to be fun. And you're gonna learn some stuff.
Hopefully. Do you know who you're talking to? It's going to be fun, hopefully.
Hey, young Josh, what's up? Coach Mo, I see you. Pastor Paul, what's up? Thanks for the super hearts, Melanie. You guys are so good to us. Thank you so much. Marty Stone, thank you for inviting your followers. Thanks for sharing it out. You guys are awesome. You guys are super awesome. Thank you so much. Share it out. Share it out. Instead of share it out, share it out. Oh, that's an interesting way to say it. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so hopefully we're going to have a good time, and hopefully, there'll be some ministry happening as we go along as well. All right, because, Christians kind of do that. It just happens. So, but anyway, so Stacy Lynn Harp. Wow. I am interviewing Stacy Lynn Harp. I feel so humble right now. Like, she's the expert at this, not me. I don't know what I'm doing right now. And I feel you admit it. But that's okay. So, anyway, we're not going to ask her age because you don't ask a woman her age. That is not nice. That is rude. So we're just gonna say she's 25 and holding. So anyway, you are originally from where?
Upstate New York.
Wow, upstate New York. Because I know a lot of times you talk about California, but you're actually
Yes.
from upstate New York. Cool. How long were you there?
I was there till I was 7.
7 years old. Wow.
Yeah.
And then what caused the move?
My mom left my father because she was having an affair with her uncle. And so she decided to leave my dad for her uncle and move us to California.
Okay, that
I know.
happens.
This is just great. This is like a soap opera already.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't that happen all the time? Yeah. No, it's not normal.
Yeah, incest. It runs wild. But unfortunately, that's actually the case. That's actually what happened.
Yeah, it's really sad, but
It is.
it is what it is. All right. So once you guys left, how was like? Did you get to see your dad at all? Like, was there visitation?
No, actually, my father pretty much disowned my mother after that,
Oh wow.
and I saw him one time after that.
Oh wow.
Actually, was it one time? Yeah, one time when I was in high school, he actually came. He drove across America because he was one of these retired people that rented an RV, and he drove across America with I think it was his third wife at the time, and he ended up in California in Rubidoux. He went through Rubidoux, which actually is Rubidoux, in case you've never been to Rubidoux, which is almost like a armpit of California. And anyway, he stopped in and saw me and my brother for 2 days.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that showed a little bit of effort. Going across the country is not exactly easy, so it's better than not showing up at all, right?
Right.
So wow. But when you guys were all together, did you have good memories of your dad? Or?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because most of you guys know that I take care of my dad now, and that actually it's kind of a miracle story, really, because my dad is 40 years older than I am. He's 89 years
Wow.
old. He'll be 90 this year.
Wow.
Quick, guess how old I'll be this year? I still can't wait to be 50. It's gonna be so cool. I don't care if you know my age, because hey, just so you know, own it. You know what I mean? I'm a woman. I don't dye my hair. This is it. And anyway, so, but yeah, after 40 years, really, me and my dad have been reunited, and yet he's not the man I knew when I was a little kid, a very little kid. But the story I have to tell is totally cool. It's one of my favorite ones. Upstate New York has a ton of snow. It's like Chicago, and when you get snow there, it's like feet
Mm-hmm.
or feet.
Feet, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and one of the pictures I have from my childhood is on our house. There's literally like 2 feet of snow on our house. So my dad owned a snowmobile, and he would take me on his snowmobile. And I remember when I was approximately, Jason.
I saw that.
You don't have any hair, do you? Anyway, when I was I had to be 3 or 4. My dad would put me in front of me on the snowmobile, and I remember this so vividly. And this is like one of the only childhood memories I have. But he actually he said, you know what? I want to go ahead and you stay right there, honey. Don't touch anything. And so, of course, I don't know what he was doing, but I took the handles and I, started squeezing them. And so I took his snowmobile and I was riding it without him on it when I was like this little girl.
Wow.
And my dad literally chased me until he caught me and saved me from like smashing into a tree or something.
Oh my gosh.
That's one of my fun childhood memories with my dad, was basically stealing his snowmobile.
That probably would have won you a lot of money on America's Funniest Home Videos, I bet.
Maybe. I don't know, but how many of you have ever heard that story? See, Pastor Rick like totally pulled that out of me. I've never heard that story on air anywhere.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So the memories you do have were good, but unfortunately, once Mom said "see you later," then he was kind of out of your life.
pretty much.
Wow, that stinks. Wow. That stinks. That's, you know, we all know that dads have a big effect on our identity and stuff like that. So it kind of stinks that that all happened. But life goes on. We press forward. We go forward. I did actually write some questions down. Believe it or not, this is not off the cuff or anything, as I tend to do. But I did write some stuff down. So one question I have, and this is again go back to your parents. No, you're not on the couch or anything. That's funny. That's like a psychology joke because Stacy's into all that stuff. How would you say? In what ways are you both the same and different from each of your parents?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, okay. Well, I'll do my mom first
Okay.
because, you know, my mom, I grew up with my mother. My mom was one of the most outspoken people on the planet. She had she was vulgar. The F word was her favorite word. And I'm talking the bad F word, just so you know, people, you know.
Faith.
The one, you know, just, you know what it is.
It wasn't faith?
You know that word.
Faith, right?
I mean, my mom's more like a sailor. She was a fleshly woman, but she was a very persuasive woman as well. And, you know, and my mom could sing. So I'd say that the couple of things with my mom that I am a lot like hers is I'm very outspoken and I can sing, but my mom never held back an opinion. And it probably would have been better if she had, just so you know, but I think I got that from her because you know, and my mom was really good with money and I am too. My mom really taught me how to save money. She taught me as the girl, even though she didn't want a girl, she told me that my whole life. The ironic thing about it is she trained me differently than my brothers because both of my brothers have struggled financially. They are people who are, I'll say in the past, were irresponsible financially. And my mom made sure that I could, you know, that I knew how to take care of a bank account, that I could, you know, get money and save it and everything. Because, quote, she never wanted me to have to depend on a man, unquote. And I was never the type of person who actually pursued even getting married. I wanted to get married, but I never pursued it. And so when I ended up finding Bareface, it's not his real name. Sorry, I had to say that.
We'll get to that later.
And you all thought about it, didn't you? Anyway, so in that way, that's how I'm like my mom. I'm a little bit taller than my mom was. She was short. I'm kind of short. Depending on who you ask.
Was she like a women's liber type?
No, actually, you know, it's interesting. When I turned 18, my mom actually told me to vote Republican. And I said, why? Because that's what we do. And you know, it's weird because politics weren't really discussed in my family growing up, and neither was religion. Neither things were. My mom was a smoker too, actually, but I don't smoke.
Okay, so that's another difference. Any other differences between you that are vastly different?
I'm sweet and lovable.
That is true. That is true.
My mom, no, my mom wasn't. just saying. Now, as far as my dad, the irony of it all with my father is that my dad is a hard worker. He is somebody who is extremely smart. I mean, he worked for Alcoa for 42 years, and he went in right after he was in the Korean War. And so he actually worked his way up all the way through the company at Alcoa Aluminum Company, in case you don't know what that is. And he actually, after he retired, he built a restaurant called Parrot's Place, because that's my maiden name is Parrot. Yes, you can laugh at that if you want. Try going through life with a bird last name, people. I'm just saying. Anyway, he built a restaurant from the ground up, literally, and he ran that restaurant in upstate New York for a number of years and sold it. So he's an entrepreneur, and so I got my entrepreneurial spirit, I believe, from him, and I got my very quirky sense of humor from him, because when I was reunited with my dad a couple of years ago, he would tease I was going to say a bad word. He would tease me, and I would get so mad, and my husband would start laughing, and I'd be like, "What are you laughing at?" And he'd be like, "Well, your dad's doing exactly to you what you do to other people." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I actually, my father and I have the same wit, and it's just a natural. I think it's truly a natural charisma, just the ability to put people at ease. I just think we're naturally both good with people, and the irony of it all. Oh, and I will say this too. My dad never, not one time in my whole life of 49 long years, has he ever said one bad word about my mom. Not one.
That's to be commended.
My mother, all she did was say bad words about my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom and my dad are, like oil and water. And yeah. So and it's weird because some people say I totally resemble my mother if they see a picture because I have blue eyes like my mom did. But then a lot of you have seen my picture of me and my dad, and I'm the spitting image of him. I think I resemble my dad more though, personally.
Now I'm gonna go forward and backwards. They always say you marry your dad. How much is that true in your case, you think? If at all?
It's really it's actually really interesting because Randall is a lot like my dad.
Mm.
And it's the weirdest thing because I didn't grow up with my dad.
Right.
And my dad loves Randall. I mean, he will cry because he just thinks Randall's the greatest. Well, he is.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's really cool. Awesome. And you have 2 brothers, you said.
I do.
Did they ever get saved?
My older brother is actually a half brother, and to my knowledge, to this day, he's still not a believer. But I have him to thank for being antagonistic towards me when I first became a Christian, because he was the one that told me, "Oh yeah, you know what?" Because he was raised in the Catholic Church and went to Catholic school, right, with the nuns, hitting him and stuff, and so he got a real bitter thing because my mom and dad raised me Catholic until I was 7, and then they got thrown out of the Catholic Church because they got divorced, which right. You don't do that in the Catholic Church. Protestant church, go ahead, but not the Catholic. They'll kick you out.
Oh yeah.
My younger brother was actually my first convert, and I got saved. I shared the gospel with him, and he got saved right after I shared the gospel with him. And so my younger brother has been a Christian the same length of time I have.
That's awesome. Are they supportive of you, whether they believe or not?
My older brother doesn't talk to me now because he, the sordid abuse story that I go through. Long story short, my older brother moved out when my mom got remarried and didn't like the guy, and basically disowned me when I turned my uncle in for molesting me. So, because he moved with my uncle. Great uncle, actually. And my younger brother doesn't like to talk about anything because who likes to talk about family secrets and abuse in your family, especially if it doesn't involve you, which I really think God protected my younger brother, and it actually doesn't involve him. So, but he supports me wholeheartedly as a believer, for sure.
That is interesting, though. I've heard that before, that the person that is doing the molestation or abuse or whatever the case may be, even if there's multiple kids, for some reason it seems like they just target one and yet leave the other ones alone. I've heard that a lot, and it's just
it's actually, unfortunately, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, because on some level it's fortunate for those who aren't abused, but on other level it's not. And so my younger brother, I mean, he was like 5 when my mom left my dad, so he doesn't really remember much. But excuse me, I have this extremely annoying tickle in the back of my throat, and I'm trying to make sure I have stuff to do that, but I might just went, wait, I think I know what it was. Hold on just a second.
No problem.
It was Tug knocked it out of the wall. Here. Okay.
Technical difficulties.
He likes to lean on stuff. Okay, I'm back.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay.
All right, so New York, from New York to California, and then were you in California until you got married?
Yeah, I got married in 1992.
Okay. And then as far as school, growing up in school, what did people think? What did your fellow peers in school think of Stacy? Were you popular? Were you quiet? Were you nerdy? What were you?
Well, okay, so in school, okay, I feel like I'm the voice. This is my life story, people. All right, well, okay, this is what I'll say. Hi, Mr. Kwan. Well, I actually, let's see. I went to 4 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. So I had a very, disjointed childhood in that regard because we ended up moving a lot. So I would say, looking at report cards from what my teacher said, I was very, very shy and withdrawn because I actually had a speech impediment when I was very, very young, and I had to go through speech therapy and stuff like that. And it's so funny because even today I still flub up things, and I just go, okay, whatever. It's just like you own it, and it's like this is part of what it is. When I was in high school, though, I was in the in crowd, and in fact, I was picked by the teachers in high school. I was picked to be a part of the baccalaureate, and I was on the court, the royal court. The teachers put you on, and I actually did the closing. Was it the closing, or I did the opening prayer at my graduation, and I led something at my baccalaureate too. So I actually was pretty popular.
Cool.
And ironically, when I got saved in high school, I became part of the Christian club there. And the Christian club, my job as officer was campus customer relations.
Interesting. Okay.
So I ended up doing, basically, I was the head of evangelism.
Well, that's good. Well, that was leading you to the future. So that's
Who knew?
cool.
I did not know that.
No, God, isn't it funny how God sets things up and we don't even realize? So that's awesome. And how old were you when you got saved, and how did that happen?
I was, I actually don't know the actual date, but I was.
I don't either.
I would say I was probably 13. I was between 13 and 14. I was in my freshman year of high school, and I had joined choir because I had moved again for the millionth time, and I went to a new high school. And so my goal was to make some friends, and I had joined choir, and there's a girl in there. Her name was Gail, and Gail we became friends, and she actually said, you know what, can I talk to you about Jesus? He loves you. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, do you know that Jesus could be your best friend? I said, really? And she's like, yeah. And, in retrospect, it's funny because she would be like, are you sure you want to hear this? And I was like, yeah, I totally want to hear this. And so we would eat lunch together, and she would tell me Bible stories. And then she asked me one day, she said, do you have a Bible? And I said, no. And so she said, maybe you should ask your mom and dad for a Bible. So I went home, and I asked my mom for a Bible, and she got so ticked off at me. We don't have a Bible. We don't whatever. So I went back to Gail, and I said, my mom said I can't have a Bible. And Gail was living with her grandmother. Her grandmother was raising her, and so she went home to her grandma and said, can you give me a Bible for my friend Stacy at school, because she wants to believe in Jesus and become a Christian. And so her grandma gave her a Living Bible, the Living Bible translation with the green cover. You may have seen one of those. I found one at a used store. I bought it just for, sentimental sake. And we set up a time to meet in the library before school one morning. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting there in one of those desks, those cubby desks, and waiting, anxiously for this Bible because I really wanted it, but my mom wouldn't let me have it because, it's such a bad thing. And anyway, she comes up, she said, hey, I got it. I go, what? She says, I have the Bible. So she gets it out of her backpack and she hands it to me. And I'll tell you, Rick, I had the Bible, and I was like, wow, this is like the coolest thing. And she opened up to Romans 12:1 and 2, and she read it to me. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so awesome. So I went home and I showed my mom the Bible, and she got pissed off. She was like, bah! And so I was like, okay, there's no way I can do this. So I would get up early, super early in the morning for a kid, and I would literally get underneath my blanket on my bed with a flashlight, and I would read my Bible in secret for like an hour before I did anything. And I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. And I would write a verse of scripture. I write it down. I'd like put 3 or 4 of them down, and I'd go to school and I'd hand it out to my friends and say, let's talk about this today. And it drove my mother nuts. I mean, completely crazy. And so I had the Bible. That's basically how I got my first Bible. And then here's the thing. Then what happened was I was watching TBN, because way back in the day when TBN first started, TBN was, on, and my uncle would be molesting me, and he would put on Christian TV.
At the same time?
Yes, super twisted, I know. And it was around that time that I began to know that there was something really, really wrong. I mean, I knew something was wrong because my uncle had been molesting me since I was like 6 and 7. He actually started molesting me in New York. And then when my mom moved out to be with him, he continued, and it continued for all those years. It was like, I was like going, okay, there's something wrong, and I knew it, but I didn't know how to get out of it, because his goal was to basically rape me continually on my 16th birthday. And he had this really disgusting, gross plan to do this. And so my conversion story actually really centers around a lot of that, because Gail was showing me Christ at that point. And I was reading the Bible, and I was getting that God loved me. And I was watching this religious TV going, this is weird. They keep saying, you got to ask Jesus into your heart. Well, I had the seeds planted of faith when I was Catholic, right? I mean, I knew God was there, but I didn't know who he was. And so I would pray that prayer. I would say, Lord Jesus, please come into my heart, and I didn't understand it.
Right.
I prayed it a lot. And then I got this insight. And then one day after all this stuff was happening, Gail came up to me at school, and she said to me, Stacy, you're born again. I can tell. I go, I am? And she's like, yeah. I said, how cool is this? And I had this immense joy because I had this conversion. Everybody could tell, especially my mother, And at that point, after Gail said I was really saved, I would take the Bible and I would be walking around my house, my mom's house, with the Bible, and I'd be reading it and irritating my mother until she finally, pretty much told me, if I ever see that Bible again, you're never going to get another one, And so I would read it, like I said, clandestinely. And it was through that conversion, though, that I ultimately went to somebody. Oh, I have to tell this, though. This is important. So I get saved. The house next door goes up for sale where I live, literally the house next door. And, of course, who's going to move in, right? I get saved. I'm like, Lord, so great. I love you. The house next door goes up for sale. The people that move into the house ended up being a Filipino family that just happened to be a Christian family, radically Christian.
Awesome.
That just happened to have children my age and my brother's age. So this Filipino family friended my mom and us children and said, hey, I think your daughter wants to go to church. Would it be okay if we brought them to youth group? And my mom, maybe. And so Violet was her name, this Filipino lady, and Violet and August, and they'd be like, come on, Mary. My mom's name's Mary. She'd, come on, Mary, let them go to youth group. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, let me go, you know. And so my mom started letting me go to youth group at this church. So these neighbors would bring me and my brother. So that's actually how I got introduced to the church. After I got introduced to the church, I went to somebody at that church and I told them that I was being abused, and they didn't do anything about it, you know, which is really sad in retrospect. It's actually horrible. I'm not mad at them for it, but what they did tell me was, they said, tell somebody at school. So I told a counselor at school what was going on. My uncle got arrested. My mom was going to be under investigation. They asked me, my uncle was actually thrown in jail. He would have been given 25 years because there's so much stuff that they confiscated when they arrested him. And basically he took pictures of pornography. You know, there's just so much stuff that I told the police about. So they have all this on record. And it was going to go to trial. He was going to get 25 years, but then my mother forced me to recant. And basically the day that I say I committed my life to the Lord was when I prayed and I said, okay, Lord, my mom's threatening to kill me if I don't recant this story. So I'm going to ask that you give me the strength to do what my mom wants and get these charges dropped against my uncle. And I did. And I told Laura, I said, if you do it, I will follow you the rest of my life. Now, I look back now and I go, that was the cry of a kid who didn't know any better. You know, my mother wasn't protecting me at all. She was evil. Frankly, my mom was pretty evil. She knows she would have been implicated and probably put behind bars herself because of the stuff that she did. My uncle got out of jail, and my older brother lived with my uncle literally till he died. So my older brother has nothing to do with me to this day because of it. And it's really sad because even after my mom died, you know, my brother, his heart is so hardened. And I think it's because he was probably also abused by my uncle. That's my guess.
Right. Now,
that's my testimony in a nutshell. I mean, that's the short version.
Right. Despite the fact that you recanted, even though they found all that stuff, you didn't get in any trouble at all because there was nobody to say, you've done this against me?
Yeah. In the state of California, when a victim recants, it doesn't matter how old the victim was. And this was in the 80s, okay? So this was in the 1983 or 4, something like that. So on the books were, you know, if the victim recants, they can't do anything. But the cops knew that I was lying about it because they had all this evidence. I mean, my uncle took pictures of me. There was pornography. There was, you know, he would put a heart on the calendar every time he molested me. So there was all of this stuff going on.
Which is pretty twisted,
they had all the evidence. And actually, when I went in before the police and I was interrogated, the guy told me, I know you're lying. And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm lying, but I can't admit I'm lying because, you know. But I have to tell you that even good came out of that because the arresting officer, his name was Steve. I won't say his last name, but I still remember him. When I after that, when I decided to go into therapy and get help because I was all confused about my sexuality and I wasn't sure if I was gay or not, true story, I go into therapy and my therapist, you know, starts helping me. And within a couple of sessions, I understood why I was struggling with feeling like I liked women over guys, even though I always liked guys. So, you know, there's not a problem there. But I was confused. And her therapy of me was within a couple of weeks, I understood it. And I was like, okay. And I knew it conflicted with my faith because it was wrong. So I never pursued that. But because I had been... because my case had gone before the police and there was a record of it, she was able to apply for victim witness assistance, which is basically the assistance that all police stations or states have that will award victims of crime money for that. So I was awarded $10,000 from the state of California for being a victim of a crime because I had actually turned that in. And basically my therapist ended up with all of that money. Which is, you know, I mean, $10,000 was a spit in the bucket compared to actually what I ended up spending ultimately in therapy. But it was validation. And I went back years later and I looked up the police officer, the arresting one. And it's where I cried because he knew. And he told me that he was a Christian and praying for me through that whole time.
Wow.
And he told me, he said, Stacy, the system sucks. And he said, it's cases like yours that piss us off. Because he said, when our hands are tied and a kid knows, you know, we know a kid's being hurt, there's nothing we can do, you know?
Yeah. That's tough. Now, if this was today and this had happened today, do you think it would be totally different?
I hope so. I mean, I hope so, because this was even before Oprah made talking about incest really common, you know. And I would hope in California that has changed. But I look back and I look at it all and I go, you know, God is good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he got me through it. He saved me. He put a Christian family next door.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally, when you look at your life, you can look at and see what he has done. And you know, people will say, well, would you have changed your testimony? Would you have changed whatever? Of course, I would never volunteer for being sexually abused my whole life again. Duh. Hello.
Right.
But I will say that there's always something good brought out of it. Mm-hmm. And I think what I bring to our show, you know, because of my experience, not only going through my own stuff, but actually working through it, you know, of course I'm emotional because it's, you know, still painful, but I still look at how God was involved in my life the whole time. And I'm like, how can anybody not believe in God? You know, and he was hounding my mother the whole time too, I'll tell you.
Wow. JR just said he probably would go to jail just for the photos today. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's child pornography, so. But yeah, it's funny how we easily remember all the bad stuff, but we don't focus on, well, yeah, but what about all this other stuff that God laid out and planned for us, and we don't really think about that. I mean, unless you take the time to do so and realize how many times God did, you know, he was really there, even though, you know, at the time maybe we just felt pain, but in the background, he was working things out. He was doing stuff to help us in our favor, and it always could be worse. No matter what you go through, it always could have been worse. Even though we can't picture it at the time, but yeah, it definitely could be worse. No, and people always say, like, whatever you're going through, trust me, somebody's going through worse than you, which maybe is not a big comfort, but you know, you're not alone. Somebody else is going through it, and you know, it stinks. But God, I think God is there in the background, and you know, because a lot of times we'll just say, like, where are you, God? Where are you, God? But he is there. I really do believe he really is there, and we can't ever act like, you know, well, God, you don't know what suffering is like. Really? Really? Have you ever had nails put in your hands and feet? Have you ever been beaten in the face and spit in your face and say, prophesy, who did that? You know, like, come on. He does understand. So he is there, and he does, you know, he does things, I think, in the background, even though we don't feel like it, but he really did, and he was. And like you said, you know, you're the person you are today because of all the stuff you went through. So, and God knew that you were strong enough, you know, to be able to get through it. You know, you had strength inside of you to get through it, and you know, it's a big deal that he counted you, you know, worthy, I guess, or I don't know how to say that, but you know, he was going to use you later on, because, like, so I've always heard people say this: the pain that you went through and the suffering you went through, it wasn't for you, it was for somebody else. So now, because you went through all that stuff, you have that heart of compassion that I necessarily don't have. I was never molested. So although I'm going to have compassion, I'm not going to have the same level of compassion that you have, you know? So, you know, even though what we go through really sucks, you know, should put it out there, but still, God saw the future, and he knew, like, you know, you're going to get through it, and you're not only going to get through it, you're going to help other people get through it. So does he want us to suffer? Of course not. But, you know, he uses everything. He uses everything to the best of his ability, you know, and he's got a lot of ability. So, but all right, let's go back to more happy spot. So you started answering this before, Once you did get saved, how did you and everybody around you, and you already started answering this, see that yes, something definitely changed. Something's different about you. You're not how you were. Like with me, it was pretty quick. Like people could see, like you don't seem so depressed. You don't seem so sad anymore. You don't just seem like you want to die all the time, because I was very, very suicidal. Oh, and I was going to also say, like, a lot of the stuff you did as a kid to sneak Jesus, I had to do too. I'd wake up early before anybody was awake, and I'd go watch TBN in the basement and really quietly, and and I'd read the Bible. My father would see me and be like, "You can't read that. You're gonna go crazy. You're gonna be in the crazy house. Only the priest could read that." And I'm like, "Really, Dad? Really? A book? Come on."
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's also really similar. That's why sometimes we laugh and say, like, "Are we sure we're not brother and sister?" Because like some of our stuff is so crazy similar. But yeah, how did you and everybody know, like, something happened to Stacy? She's not the same person anymore after you got saved.
Well, I mean, it was clear. I mean, it was clear. And the weird thing is that I can't remember much prior to being saved. I mean, I can, but I can never. I always believed in God. That was the weird thing, because and I really do look at the fact that my mom and my dad, they dedicated me as a baby,
Mm-hmm.
and I really do believe that that was a dedication the Lord took seriously.
Yeah, me too.
And I just look at it, and I have to say that I prayed for my mom for 20 years, and my mom, when I was in graduate school, first semester of graduate school. I worked through college. It takes me all this time to get ultimately to graduate school. It took me ultimately 13 years to get through school to get my master's. And the first semester right after 9/11, my mom's diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me, really?" I mean, I was like, seriously. And I had a really wise professor who said, "You know what? You should actually, if it's, because at that point in my therapy, my therapist, I had cut off my mom for 6 months. Didn't have any contact with her, because my therapist said, you're not going to get any better because she just keeps beating you up. I mean, this is ridiculous." So I cut my mom off. So she's diagnosed with cancer. My professor said, "Look, if you're going to be involved with her life, until the end, you need to make the decision." And so I prayed about it, and God led me to be a part. So I went down, I saw her in the hospital, told her that I forgave her, even though my mom never confessed her sin toward me, never apologized for it, never asked me for forgiveness. I told my mom I forgave her. And the next day, she accepted Christ.
Wow.
So the last 2 years of her life, she was a believer, and she changed radically.
Wow.
And that woman, Violet, and her husband, August, baptized her in her tub before she died.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is huge. Like, because I had to forgive my dad, who was very physically and verbally abusive to me. And it's almost cliche now, because we keep hearing it all the time. It's like, forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. But it's really true. It really, really is. It sets you free in a way that's almost inexplicable. Like, I had so much hatred in my heart towards my dad, because I was the good. I had one brother. I was the good one. I didn't do anything wrong. But man, he was a drunk, and if you just looked at him wrong, or he thought you looked at him wrong, like, wham, you got smacked, you got beat, whatever. And it's like, I got to the point where I hated my dad, and before I got saved. And then once I got saved, then God's like, "Okay, guess what? Now we got to deal with this now." And I'm like, no, that's okay. No. And I try to ignore it. And then, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I got to the point where God pretty much said, you have to forgive God. I mean, you have to forgive your father. Otherwise, you can never move forward. And I finally did. And it wasn't easy, and it was a process. And, and yeah, same thing with my dad. My dad never admitted he did anything wrong. He never admitted he did anything wrong. Like, one thing that always baffled me, that my mom, when he'd go to the Portuguese club and go with all his buddies and get drunk and come home, and of course he's out of control, whatever. So as soon as my mom saw his car coming in the parking lot, she would rush me and my brother into our bedroom, close the lights, go to bed, pretend you're sleeping, whether you're sleeping or not, because he just didn't want my dad. She didn't want my dad to bother us. And so that happened gazillion times. I can't tell you how many times. So later, way later, we finally told him, hey, we did this because you would come home drunk and out of control. He refused to believe it. To his dying breath, he's like, no, that's not true. It's not true. So he would never admit it. But you know what? Again, it doesn't matter what the abuser says, thinks, whatever. You have to forgive for yourself. It helps you. And I literally could not grow spiritually until I got to the place where I started to forgive my father. And it's so important. And I know, you had the experience, I had the experience, and guarantee there's people on this Periscope right now. Some of you might even be crying, saying like, but how do I forgive? That's what I said too. I'm like, but he did wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. But you just have to, with me, I said, God, you literally have to help me because I don't know how to do it. I don't have it inside of me to do it, period. So you're going to have to help me.
I think forgiveness is a process, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
it really is. And I think what people need to understand is that forgiveness doesn't mean you necessarily have to trust them, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in a relationship with them. And that I can tell you as a therapist, one of the first things that people talk about is, well, what this whole forgiveness thing, especially if you're in the church. It's like if you forgive, then it means you forget. That's such a lie. It's not true.
No.
And if you forgive, it means basically what it means. This is how I look at it. If you forgive somebody, basically what you're doing is you're letting go of revenge and any type of thought or action that you would do to hurt that person that hurt you.
Yeah.
You're relinquishing control of that, of wanting hurt and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you know what? I heard somebody say one time, look, God will repay. I mean, the Bible says he will repay, but the truth is he will repay. And I do believe my mom's cancer, I know it's controversial, but I do believe that there are things that happen to people as a result of their sin. My mom died when she was 57. That's young. Excuse me. And I think that is, I think that there's definitely consequences to that. And anyway. So.
Me personally, like I think, because that's one thing my mom would say all the time when we were little, don't do bad, God's going to punish you. And I'm like, what? I thought God was a good God. But I think what it is that as long as we are in his will, we have a protection over us. But as soon as you get out of his will, that protection lifts, and then the devil has opportunity to come in and destroy us, because what does he do? Steal, kill, destroy. So as long as you're under the umbrella of God's protection, and you need to be in his will to be in that umbrella, then you're good. But if you've removed yourself from that umbrella, and unforgiveness definitely will do that, then you've opened yourself up to attacks from the devil. And yet we'll sit here and say, like, God, how can you let this happen to me? Well, you let the protection come off of you because you're not following God's will and doing what he wants. So like I was just reading Job, because I'm doing the Bible app chronologically, whatever, and right now we're in Job, and it's interesting because it's like Satan's like, yeah, but if you did this to him, God, then he would spit in your face, and and then God's like, okay, go do this, you can do this, that, and the other, but you just can't kill him. You can't really hurt him that way. And it's like, so in 1 minute it's like God did it, but then in the next minute you realize it's not God that did it, it's the devil that did it. So God is still a good God, and I always would believe that. But if you
people allow it. That's one thing. I had a guest, and I'll never forget what the guest said. They said, people always throw up, well, why did God allow this? Why did God do this? Blah, blah. And he said, why do people allow it? Exactly. My mom allowed the abuse to take place.
Yeah.
My dad, by virtue of not being there, was complicit too. I had to go through a forgiveness process with my dad when I first met him. A couple of years ago when I brought him back to my house, moved him in, I was mad. I was really mad at my dad. And I was like, oh my gosh, really, Lord? I didn't know I was that mad at my dad. I was. And me and my dad had it out and cried and hugged, So.
Yeah, because they're supposed to be our protectors. Why didn't you protect me? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's absolutely Josh. Josh is right. Infection spreads if not treated.
Exactly.
It's so true. But you know what? There is victory if you do what God says. And, and I'm not saying, hey, I was in therapy 15 years. It took me a long time, and there's still stuff I deal with because of it.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Definitely.
My goal is to move forward and help other people move forward.
Amen. So. And isn't it funny how when you help other people, it helps you?
Generally speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Not all the time. Some of those people you just want to smack upside their head and say,
yeah, true. Some people, yes, exactly. So, all right, let's shift a little bit gears. When did you, this might be an awkward question, and it's not to be like arrogant, but when did you get a sense of, I'm not what I always like to call, I'm not just simply a pew warmer. God has a calling on my life. I'm not just an average Joe Schmo Christian who's going to sit down and do nothing. When did you get a sense of God really has a calling on my life? And when did you really feel that push? And then, like, what did you kind of do to kind of start to go in that direction?
That's a good question. I've never been asked that question.
I try to think of good ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the questions you asked me, I've never. Okay, well, I don't necessarily. I know what you're asking me, but I don't necessarily see myself that way. I think I knew when I was first saved that I had a gift of teaching the Bible. I just knew. I knew because every time I'd read the Bible, I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's a Bible lesson here. And I would write the scripture, I'd take it to my friends, and I would say, people would do that. But then going through what I went through as a high schooler, I moved out on my own when I was 18. And then I started actually going to church all the time because I wasn't being grounded or whatever from church. Because my mom liked to ground me from church. Who does that, people?
Exactly.
Anyway, but I remember in one of the churches I was at, it was a very charismatic church, and the pastor, and I don't know why I remember this, Rick, but I think this was maybe when God set me apart. I remember him saying, I want to anoint you for service with oil. And if you want to be anointed for service with oil, then come up in this line. So I remember him coming up and anointing my head, my feet, my hands, or whatever, and all that. And then it was after that I started college. I worked at Toyota for a couple of years, and then I ended up working at Focus on the Family. When I worked at Focus on the Family, it was at that same time I met Randall, my husband. And Randall, interestingly, how I met him was on my way to therapy. There's this church that was there. I took a wrong turn, saw this church, and I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to move down to this area, like 40 miles from where I grew up, away from my mom and all this other stuff, which again was radical. I mean, it was like totally going away from my mom. And because I wanted to be close to my therapist's office, because that's who I was connecting with. I mean, that was my life for a very long time. But that church kept harassing me. And so I said, okay, Lord, I'm just going to go to that church. And so I went to the church, and Randall was the usher, the greeter at the door. And he invited me to the singles group. And so I got involved in the singles group. The next thing you know, we're going out to a volleyball game. He invites me to a volleyball game. And after that, we go out to dinner. And Randall's asking me all these questions. And I remember I was sitting there in the restaurant on the booth before we get to go into the table. Randall's asking me all these questions. I'm looking up at him, and the Lord says to me, that's going to be your husband. Mm. And I remember going, really? Cool. He's good looking, He's really good looking. I like that. And so for 2 years, we became friends, and I guess we were courting. We never really called it that. And then eventually we defined it. And it was so funny because at one point Randall says to me, you're not my type.
Ooh, wow.
You're not my type. Yikes. And then 3 days later, he proposed to me. Okay, and so this year it'll be 26 years we've been married. And wow. And it's just weird because what connected Randall and I was our faith, the fact that he actually was really a singles pastor at the time. I still believe Randall's called into ministry. I don't know that he's ever going to go outside the internet as far as serving, but he's always had that gift for ministry. I always have. I play guitar and wrote a song, and he produced it for me. And it was that love of music that God actually gave me that as a gift. So I did that, and then I worked at Focus on the Family, eventually left, went through college. And then in my last semester of college, 13 years later, I started blogging. And I was blogging about politics, expressing my point of view, people. Just so you know, I do that. And I had this guy contact me. He wanted me to put an ad on my blog for the Ronald Reagan in the Face of Evil DVD. And he also happened to be working on the Chronicles of Narnia film.
Oh.
And so he said he would pay me. So I said, okay, I'll take it. And we hit it off. And he said, the National Religious Broadcasters is coming out in California. I'm going to be in a booth for the Chronicles of Narnia, promoting the Chronicles of Narnia movie. This was in 2005, you guys, just so you know.
Wow.
And he said, I'd love to meet you. Why don't you come down and meet me? I'll give you a free pass. And
cool.
I told my husband, I said, cool. Yeah, all right, I'll do it. A week before I was supposed to meet him, he calls me up. You know what? I changed my mind. Well, by that time, I'd already been emailing my favorite talk show host on the East Coast, Janet Parcel, right? And Janet emailed me back, said, I'm going to be at NRB. Maybe you can come and meet me and Craig. And I said, yeah, I'd love to meet. I would love to meet you because you're like my spiritual mom, anyway. And so I told Randless, I'm going to go down to NRB. I'm going to see if I can get in to meet Janet and Craig. I'm going to tell them my story about how this Chronicles of Narnia guy, reneged on his promise. I'm going to try to beg my way in. And and I swear, Rick, I went up to that person that was supposed to let me in 5 million times, it felt like. And he's like, nope, you need a pass. So I'm like, dang. And so I'm sitting outside in the foyer. The expo doors are closed. And I'm sitting there, and all these people come out, they sit down and everything. And they start talking to me. Like, what are you doing here? Who are you with? I said, well, I'm just trying to get in because I want to meet Craig and Janet Parcel. And I want to, this guy, he promised me from the Chronicles of Narnia booth, and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, some would listen, all that. 2 hours in, I'm going, come on, Lord. Craig is supposed to sign the books at 2 o'clock. And I really, would like to get in. And this woman and this man from the TV show, the Seventh-day Adventist TV show called Amazing Facts, came over, sat down, they started talking to me. What are you doing here? Blah, blah. Told them the whole story. They said, hold on, young lady. I said, okay. And so within 5 minutes, the TV show guy from Amazing Facts TV and this local radio talk show host, they came and they gave me a free pass to the expo.
Wow.
And they said, this will get you in for the rest of the week. Just go have fun.
Wow.
And at the time, I didn't know what a great gift that was. So I walked in, and I walked in the expo. I'm seeing all these book publishers, Crossway Book Publishers, Baker House, Thomas Nelson, all this stuff. I'm walking in, and they're like, hey, you want a free book? I'm like, heck yeah, I love books. And so I'm collecting all these books. I finally meet Craig and Janet. I'm like, oh my gosh, I meet my heroes, and I'm hugging them and everything. And there's a lot more to the story. I could really go into massive detail here, but long story short is I pitched the publisher and I said, hey, have you guys ever thought about blogging for books? If you gave me your book, I could put it on my blog, because this guy just gave me the idea about the video, and in exchange for money. And the woman at Crossway says to me, she said, what do you do? And I said, well, actually, I'm a therapist. I said, I'm about ready to graduate in a couple of weeks. And she says to me, are you sure that's what you want to do? And I go, yeah, I think so. I just spent 13 years going through school. And yeah, And she's like, you're not. You're a publicist, basically. And I said, I never forgot that. And so I told her the idea, and she's like, I love the idea. Do you have a card? I said, I don't have a card. They just let me in here. Do you have a card? And she's like, yeah. So she gives me the card. And I did this with all the publishers. And anyway, I came home afterwards. I literally emailed everybody I met. I said, hey, I have this Blog for Books program. This is what it is. I want to sign you on as my client. I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Right.
I signed 3 publishers on.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, I mean, nobody was doing this. And so I don't know what it was obviously God, right? I mean, it was one of these pivotal moments. If I never did that, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And so it's so funny because I shared this earlier in the week, but I had 3 publishers sign on to my low rate Blog for Books program. And then I thought, hey, you know what? They're giving me all these books. I should interview these people. And so I started asking for interviews of the authors, which was no big deal. Everybody wanted to be interviewed. So I got my microcassette tape recorder, my speakerphone, and I started doing my recordings. But there came a point when I was like, okay, Lord, look, do you want me to be a therapist or do you want me to do this? And I thought, okay, I'm going to be like Gideon. I'm going to throw out a fleece. Right. And I'm gonna ask God for the impossible. And so what I asked God for was an interview with Amy Grant. And you gotta remember, this was 2005.
Hey, back then.
2006, there was no internet for most people in Christian media. Christian media is like 10 years behind everybody anyway. And so
Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith were the superstars of Christian music back then.
They were, and she had crossed over and this controversy ensued. So it was kind of like she was kind of blacklisted for a while, and it's just so sad. But I decided to do some sleuthing on the internet, and somehow, to this day, I still have no idea, I found her publicist, and I shot off her publicist an email, and I said, first of all, I didn't even know what I was looking for. It's just God put this idea in my head, and I did it. I found her publicist. Her publicist emailed me back and said, well, we'll ask. We'll ask her. I said, okay. And so they sent me back this form that had like 15,000 things on it. Like, what's your reach? How many page views? How many people listen to your show? Blah, blah. And I'm like, 0. Get like 20 people that come to my website a month. You know, I mean, it was nothing. And about 6 weeks went by, and one afternoon, on Friday afternoon, I was sitting at my desk, and I was like going, Lord, I guess maybe you really don't want. And within like 10 minutes, I get this email of that prayer. Wow. And the email was one little sentence. It said, Amy Grant is available on Monday for 10 minutes. It's yours if you want it.
Yes!
That's what I said. And so I signed, I was dying. I could not believe it. I was like so excited. And basically, it was one of the worst interviews I ever did because I didn't know what I was doing. I was nervous. But after that, I was listening to Janet Parshall's show a lot. And anytime she had a guest on that I liked, I looked them up on the internet. I found their thing. I said, hey, I'm president of Active Christian Media. I have a show. I'd love to book you for a guest. And Rick, I can tell you honestly, in the 13 years, it'll be 13 years in May, I probably had less than 10 people say no to an interview. Wow. And recently it's just gotten a little bit harder because now in the last 10 or 15, well, not 10 or 15 years, in probably the last 5 or 6 years, publishing companies are struggling, so they don't give out books a lot. So you got to be, they limit what they do. Everybody is doing the Blog for Books things now because it worked. And with the advent of social media, people don't need the platform like they did before. So because I've been established, I have a very good reputation with all the publicists and publishers and things I work with. I'm just very blessed. I can pretty much get anybody I want, unless it's somebody who doesn't do internet media, like Craig Parshall doesn't. I actually asked for an interview. They won't give it to me because he doesn't do internet media. The irony of it all, and and stuff. So, but the hard part is monetizing, and and that is therein is the issue. When Randall was making 6 figures in California and doing a completely different job, money wasn't the issue. Now money is the issue, which is why I do some of the things that I do.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of bareface, I have to ask this question. You may have answered it before, but for those that don't know, where did the name Bareface come from?
Randall is the baby of 4. He has 2 older sisters and an older brother. And his mom used to call him Randall Pandle Bear. And when I found that out, I thought it was super funny. I just thought it was funny. And so I would call him Randall Pandle Bear in public all the time, and I'd make fun of him. whenever we went out on a date or whatever. Hey, Randall Bear, and it always got up. I always thought it was funny. And then just over time, it's kind of evolved to Bearface. And actually, I actually call him Bear now probably more than anything. It's like when we're off air, I call him probably Bear more than anything. Still call him Bearface, but I call him Bear more than anything, I think.
That's cute. Does he have a nickname for you, or do we not need to know that?
Well, he calls me Smutch, which means so much, as in I love you so much. It's Smutch.
Okay.
But he really doesn't call me that much. Actually, he says he does, but he really doesn't. I think the name he calls me most is Love.
Ah, that's cool.
I know, that's sweet.
That's cute. How did he propose to you? All the ladies are like, I want to know.
That's a good story, actually. Well, one day we were in Brea, driving up a hill, and there's this really fancy restaurant. And he says to me in the truck, he says, would you like to go to that restaurant someday or whatever? And I'm like, no, not really. And because it's just not my thing. And then it was probably a couple weeks after that, he said, would you like to go out to the alternative dance club with me? It's a Christian alternative club. I'm not a dancer, but I said, yeah, okay, sure, why not? And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll pick you up Friday night. I'm like, okay. So at that time, I had a hunch he was going to propose. And I was having my period really bad. This is important, people, just so you know, okay? Anyway, so I was feeling sick to my stomach and everything. He calls me up. This was way before cell phones. He calls me up and he says, you feeling okay to go out tonight? I'm like, nah, I'm not. Keep in mind, I had an idea he was going to propose. I'm like messing with him totally. I'm like, no, I'm feeling, he's like, you sure? I'm like, I don't know. Okay. So he picks me up in his truck, which was a white Toyota pickup, and it had a camper shell on the back of it. This is important. We go, and we're driving down to Huntington. I guess it was the Huntington Beach area or something. Like, we're in the car like 40 minutes. I'm getting hungry. I'm grumpy. And I'm like, hey, are we almost there? He's like, no, we're almost there. I said, no, really, are we almost there? Because I'm hungry. Me. And in fact, one of the things Randall always said was it made him laugh that I was one of the few women he dated that actually ate. All the other women would just like pick at their food or whatever. So he liked that about me. But anyway, so we pull off an off ramp and there's a Carl's Jr. there. And he says, oh, let's just go through the drive-thru at Carl's Jr. And I'm like, what? Whatever. Okay, fine. I'm hungry. So we go through the Carl's Jr. drive-thru, which we never did the whole time we dated. And I ordered, I think it was chicken strips and French fries, and he ordered something. I don't know what it was. January 10th, getting dark out, and he's like, oh, there's a building over there. There's a big parking lot. I think I'll just go drive over there. We can eat in the car. Whatever. And so we get there, and he's like, oh yeah, there's something in the back of the truck. I got to get out of the back of the truck. But hold on, I want to put in this cassette of Twyla Paris. You got to hear this song. And I said, okay. So I'm listening to this song, and he's taking stuff out of the back of his truck. He ended up taking out this table with a tablecloth and candles and china and all this stuff. And he's setting up this really nice dinner setting in this parking lot in the middle of nowhere. And he comes and opens my door, because he does open my door, and it's kind of a rule. Unless it's super hot, I gotta sit there. It's still, after all these years, it's still hard not to open my door. But he opens my door and he says, "I want to welcome you to dinner." And so we took our Carl's Jr., put it on that thing there, and it was dark, and there was candlelight, and then he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out an envelope, and I'm like, envelope? This whole time I'm like, is he gonna propose to me? I know he's gonna propose to me. But now he's pulling out an envelope. What the heck's with the envelope? So I took the envelope.
Hope it's not a prenup.
No. And
Just
actually,
kidding.
it was this certificate of guarantee for the diamond ring he got me. And so I opened it. Oh, what's that? And then he got down on his knee and he said my whole name and he asked me if I'd marry him. And I was stunned. I literally was stunned. I didn't know what to say. And I was like, uh, uh, yes. And then he stood there, and I was like waiting for him to put the ring on my finger because, duh, I just said yes to the guy.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Are you gonna put the ring on my finger?" Like, yeah. This song, Melanie, was Twyla Paris's song, "The Child Inside," which is a really cool song. It's actually the song she wrote for her husband. And when we interviewed Twyla, me and Randall actually got to interview her twice. We shared with her that we actually used that song. But after that, after I accepted the proposal, we decided to go to the dance club, and it was closed. So we ended up going back to the singles leaders of the church that we were at, which were in on everything. They already knew about it. So they had chocolate, and they had a party planned and everything for us. So all the singles groups celebrated with us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Such a romantic.
Yeah, well, and Randall later told me, he said, yeah, I was so nervous. I kept going to the bathroom. And, and he said all day long. And then when I was messing him, he was like, that wasn't nice. and he said, yeah, when you told me no to the restaurant, I had to come up with a different plan. He said he talked to an older man. He said, look, got to make this good because she's going to be telling the story the rest of her life. So you better make it good. So.
Yeah. JR said, yeah, I would have never guessed that proposal. That's funny.
It's true.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I had Carl's Jr. for my proposal dinner. And but yeah.
And look where you are today, happily married.
Yeah, there's a whole nother story though.
Yeah, I'll never forget when I was little.
No, it wasn't Walmart. It was actually a corporate building.
Yeah. When I was little, I remember Christian divorce, you didn't really hear it that much, but it was already back then like, oh yeah, 50% of marriages, non-Christian marriages, get divorced. And it's like, now it's like, yeah, same for the Christians now. I'm like, it's so sad. So sad. And here I am, I'm divorced, but
Well, the truth is that really the divorce rate among Christians, biblical Christians, actual real Christians, is only about 8%. Okay. That's actually, it's not 50%. George Barna, actually, his research is flawed big time. And it's unfortunate because that's a stat that's been out there for a long time. Christian marriages, when they're actually biblical, and people are actually really committed to Christ, the divorce rate is like under 10%.
Oh, okay.
And this is something I know just because of my own research and interviewing other people. And there's biblical reasons for it. So I don't condemn anybody, even if it wasn't a biblical reason. I don't condemn people.
Right.
But, between my mom's marriages, Randall's mom's dad, my dad, there was 12 marriages between them. So I'm very proud of the fact that we've been married as long as we have because we worked really hard at it and we broke that familiar curse. And because of Jesus, that's why. Yeah. Jesus did it, right? That's
right.
That's why.
Well, I still applaud you for the many years of marriage. That's awesome. That's very cool. All right, so I got one more question. It's gonna be.
You guys sick of me yet? Are you sick of this interview yet? Is this the weirdest, longest interview ever?
I'm having a great time. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm enjoying it. And oh, by the way, I cannot tell you how many times. I'm like, really, Holy Spirit, can you please stop telling Stacy what I'm about to ask her because I have all this stuff written down and I'm getting ready to be like, okay, this is the next question, and you start answering it, and I'm like, come on, I'm supposed to ask the question. So it's funny how God does that. But anyway, all right, here's the last question. What do you think? And this is, just in your opinion, this is not being about, arrogant or haughty. What do you think makes your ministry different or stand out from other ministries? Bless you.
Thank you. Allergies. Sorry. Well, that's a good question. And I actually think there's a lot of differences between what I do versus what a lot of other people do. I actually shared this last night, and they're like, well, Rick does what you're doing. And I'm like, well, it's not quite the same. It's a little bit different. Now, I mean, one of the things is the production value. It's not even the production value. You know, I think the biggest thing, and this is what I'm an enigma. Okay, I just say it that way. I think what I do is I bring very serious topics to the forefront, but I do it with a light touch.
Mm-hmm.
That's really my moniker. I like to have fun as a Christian. I like to goof off, but I also am very serious. And, you know, I give God the glory for my testimony. I mean, you guys have heard it. It's gory, it's ugly, it's not pretty at all. But the number one thing people say to me outside of the fact that I'm sweet is that I have a joy that most people don't. And I'm going to tell you, like at NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, a couple of years ago when I was down there doing media, and I'm going to be down there again this year. I'm going to be doing the, they have a whole press section that you go in and you get to talk to all those things. In fact, here's my press registration form is right here. I'm going to file that after the show. But to the person coming out of an interview with me and Randall, they said to their publicist, to the person, and I interviewed, I think, like 20 people or something like that one day. To the person, every single person came back and said, that was the funnest, most relaxed interview I ever did. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because God's given me the ability to put people at ease, and they talk to me, and I don't take it seriously, and I'm not bought and paid for. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to, it was Josh McDowell's, a woman who worked with Josh McDowell, because she was one of the people I interviewed afterwards. I had a long conversation with her, and she said, I want to tell you something. And I said, okay, what? She said, I've worked in radio for a number of years, long time, and everything. And she said, you know what? Everybody is so stressed out. They're stressed out about stats. They're stressed out about marketing. They're stressed out about trying to keep the audience, all this other stuff. She said, you are totally a fresh of breath air, or however that goes. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Whatever that saying is.
You got it.
And it's because you put people at ease, you have fun, you say stuff that people won't do. My A-list guest questions. Now, I learned just from God, really. I think God's been my teacher here. You know, Janet Parshall mentored me virtually by radio, and I listened to her, and I would write scripts. Like, I would hear how she would close an interview, and I would literally write the words down until I learned it and made it my own. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I went to formal training. I just think that God has truly gifted me in it. Right. And I also believe that there may not be a lot of money that comes with what I do. And that's not ultimately what I'm looking for. I'm looking for spiritual fruit. Right? I do want enough money to pay my bills.
Of course.
You know, ideally it would be super cool if Randall didn't have to work 2 extra jobs, and it would be super cool if I didn't have to too, to do that. Mm-hmm. And people that just were blessed by our ministry just gave to us all the time on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. If everybody did that, I would have the money that I need. But I look at that, and I still believe that there's even a lesson in that, right? You know, because it's like, okay, Lord, this is your thing. It's not me. And I think my quirky sense of personality, I have a quirky personality. That's no doubt. It's different. And I used to be very annoyed by it, honestly. Being called weird my whole life and various things, because my personality is weird. It just is. But it served me very well in this job. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I guess what makes it different is that I am real. I'm not pretentious by any stretch. And most people, when number one, never know the crap I've gone through because I don't share it most of the time. And number two, I give God the glory for stuff. I don't care that I've interviewed Amy Grant or the other big names I could throw out. I could care less because my ultimate goal is sharing the gospel. Right. And one thing I learned from Janet Parshall is that, you know what, sometimes you got to have on bubble gum in order to catch somebody with that. It's all bait to me. Mm-hmm. Roma Downey, I'm going to have her on. She's touched by an angel. Who cares? I mean, not that I hate her. I don't hate her, but I don't care. But you know what? Somebody's going to love her. And it may be somebody who doesn't know the real God.
Exactly.
And I can go, hey, and by the way, we just finished our interview. Didn't you like that? Now let's talk about Jesus and get the word in there.
Exactly.
That's why I do what I do.
Right.
And I'm actually thinking of, the Lord has really kind of given me some other ideas to even reach into more of a secular base. I think the fact that we're on a secular platform doing what we're doing, what you and Jason and Becky and all of us do on a secular platform, I think is revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, TBN back in the day was revolutionary.
Yeah.
Live streaming today is, because TBN, they targeted that demographic. We are in the world on live streaming. And to me, it doesn't get any better than that. I'm not in the church doing this. I'm in the world doing it.
Right.
You know?
I was on Scope yesterday, and a guy goes, "Why are there so many preachers on Periscope?" And I'm like, "Well, first of all, why not? Second of all, God can use whatever He wants to use, and third of all, I'm like, why does that seem to be your focus? Maybe God's kind of drawing you in, because everything is on Periscope. There's not just preachers on Periscope. There's the stuff I don't want to know about on Periscope too. So."
Right. Well, and there's people even here I know that kept getting my show, and they're like, "What the heck's this? Delete. I don't want to watch you. Delete. delete. Fine, I'll watch." And it's changed their life. It's kind of like, okay, hey, guess what? Now I'm in your life. You can't get rid of me. Don't you care? Yeah, it's okay if you do. No, just kidding.
Yeah. So I want to give the 15 people that are still left in here an opportunity to say, what do you think makes Stacy's ministry stand out and different from other ministries? And I'm going to say what I think. First of all, one of my favorite things is you don't pull any punches. Period. You tell it like it is. Like you said, you're real. And it's one of my favorite qualities about a person is you're not pretentious. You're not trying to impress anybody. You're just real, raw, real. And I love that. Like if you want to be in my best friend category, you got to be real. Like if I got a booger hanging on my nose, you're going to tell me. Like I'm saying, like you're going to be real. You're going to tell me the straight up truth. The passion that you have for Christ is just like makes me so excited and happy. Very bold and energetic. Amen. The passion you have for Christ it inspires me, because like even like when I was saved as a kid, like I was so excited and so happy to be, chosen by God, that He saved me, and I was so into God and the Bible, and I couldn't get enough. And then I would see other people who claimed that they were Christians, and it's like the passion just didn't seem to be there. So that made me feel like, am I weird? Is something wrong with me? But it wasn't nothing wrong with me. It was something wrong with them, because I'm like, you all should have the same passion. So
right.
Like when I see the passion in you, that like makes me feel like, yay, I'm not a weirdo. Her bubbly spirit and cares for everyone. Oh, that was sweet. Yeah, I agree with that too.
I'm seeing comments like delayed, so you're seeing them before I am. It's so funny. I'm like, going, where's that comment?
Yeah. So that I've always appreciated, and the fact that you're not afraid to tackle stuff that other Christians wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, and you're super smart, and you deal with trolls really amazingly, especially atheists and stuff like that. There's so many, like I could go on and on, but I'm trying to wait for you guys to type in stuff. Come on, you guys, type in some stuff. Come on.
Okay, so that's interesting to me. I'm not sure. Okay, so give me an example of me dealing with a troll that you recall, because I maybe it's because I know how I feel inside. I don't know. What is it about the trolls?
Like I can usually pick up on when a troll writes something. I see what they write, but I also can pick up on the motivation behind why they're saying what they're saying. And you do too. And so you give them the appropriate answer to not only give them an answer that's a good answer, but also to kind of diffuse them, because they really are trolling. They're not really asking a question because they really want a real answer. I value honesty. Amen. But they're trolling. They're trying to be a jerk. Flat out. They're just trying to be a jerk. But even though they are, you still give them a good answer, and you still respect them. And it's like, what can they say? Because you're still being nice to them. She has a beautiful spirit. She keeps it real. She uses sound doctrine. And I missed some of that. Maybe you'll catch it because you're delayed. You shine light in places that are dark.
I value honesty, hearts and stars. And I saw the other Josh's comment too. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Okay. She uses sound doctrine and she makes it plain. Yeah, and I really believe, honestly, Marlene, that is my gift. It's a gift. It is. It's just my gift, and I know it's a gift, and I try to use it the best I can. Am I always perfect? Nope. Do I get ticked off occasionally? Oh yeah, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It's funny because the hard issues like homosexuality and abortion and things like that. It's funny, and even Christian persecution, because even a big part of it, I wrote the Christian persecution blog for Voice of the Martyrs for 8 years. And I think that's part of where I get my passion too, because God put me in that classroom, to use what Janet Parshall would say. This is a classroom you're in. Why am I here learning about Christian persecution for 8 years?
Yeah. There's
a reason. I mean, I remember Glenn Penner. He was the Voice of the Martyrs Canada main guy that I worked with. We became friends, and he told me one day, he died actually a number of years ago, but he told me right before he died, he said, I spent my whole life studying this book, and you know what it is? It's a book about persecution. From Genesis to Revelation, the Jews were persecuted, the Christians were persecuted. And it's true. And we are going to suffer persecution. So I see that, but I want to also encourage people, look, you know what? If you just look, God is there everywhere. And I don't mean in the New Age stupid way, like he's in the church or whatever. But I mean, he's there. And I just think different. And I think it's because that is simply my gift. And, Rick, I have to say, it's interesting because it used to irritate me. I used to get bothered, like you were just saying, you get bothered because people do this and stuff. But, my husband, one of his biggest spiritual gifts is service. It used to drive me up a wall that when somebody at church would say, well, you go and help, fix, close up the chairs or whatever, and, clean up the kitchen or whatever. Around would be like, yeah, I'm on it. I'd be like, really? Not me. I'm just going to kick back and read the Bible, man. Forget helping out and serving that way. But I grew to understand, well, that's his gift. It's really one of his gifts. Gifts and service is one of his gifts.
Yeah.
Exhortation, teaching is mine. And I also think the gift of mercy is mine. And I don't think a lot of people necessarily see it up here, but I do think people see it when I counsel them and things like that. So,
and I love Randall too, because like people think I went to Bible school or something. I'm like, no, I've just been hardcore into this since I was 12. But like I sometimes listen to Randall teaching, and I'm like, I feel like I'm a novice listening to him, because he goes really deep and he teaches really, really well. I love listening to him teach from the Bible. And definitely, like, sometimes is like a different perspective that most people probably never heard before. So I definitely love that about Randall too. And he definitely has the gift of patience for sure. Definitely. Super big time.
To be married for me for so long, yes. He's long suffering for sure. It's totally true.
Yeah. But I mean, it works both ways. I've been married, so I get it. We all have our thing,
No, where Randall's really grown in the years that I've known Randall. He used to edit himself big time when we were first married. He would self-edit everything that he said, and it would drive me nuts in therapy, because the first 3 years of our marriage was really hard. We got separated. We were actually separated for 8 months in the beginning of our marriage.
Oh, wow.
He lived with his sister. I lived in our apartment, and we went through therapy. I mean, we learned how to communicate. And, he had a really hard time just speaking his mind, who's God given for a wife. It's like, okay. And I had a hard time not speaking my mind. And so over the years, we've known each other now almost 28 years. So it's, over the years, I now edit. Now I shut up and I listen better than I did. And, and he'll he'll get on. Sometimes before he does a scope or a teaching thing, he'll say, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about. And I'm like, don't worry. You'll be blabbing for an hour before you know it, because you won't shut up when the Bible's in your hand. So
Exactly. Yeah. And I know it's cool because God kind of tends to do that. What you lack, the other person has tons of, and vice versa. And, and God puts those type of people together. And, that's how you fit together, and it works out perfectly. And just, that's how God does that. It's pretty cool. I like that. But, yeah.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Yeah, please.
Not that I'm taking over your interview or anything, but
No.
we have talked for 90 minutes.
We have.
I know, it went fast, didn't it? My whole life in 90 minutes, people.
Yeah.
If I ever die, you can go back to this recording and remember me.
And you definitely gave me a big compliment by saying I've never been asked that question before. So I was like, yay! That's my goal. That's what I tried to do.
Well, one of the tricks of interviewing is to make sure that you always ask a unique question, because if you have raving fans that go everywhere you go, they'll get sick of hearing stuff, like the same stuff over and over. So
yeah,
I try to throw out something new.
Yeah. Somebody asked, what was that? Something about, oh, when do you usually come on? I think they're asking.
You want me to wait for it to come up so I can see?
Well, you can tell them. When do you usually come on?
Usually every day, Monday through Friday, Ramble and I actually broadcast 7 o'clock Central Time. And I think actually we might even switch it even on Thursday because we were playing pickleball. But yeah, actually we're